I'm Planetary Penny Dix, astrologer and life coach. Now I'm doing this video because a lot of people have been asking me specifically about the Ascendant. What is it? Why is it important? Why do I read that or watch that, as well as my sun sign? So I thought an explanation could be helpful for you. When one does a natal chart, the important information is the date of birth, so that'll be the day, the month and the year, and the place of birth. That's also very important, and that is also significant and affects the ascendant, and the time of birth. Now, the time of birth is kind of like your unique blueprint of the heavens, if you like, at the moment that you were born. And there won't be any other baby born in exactly the same place, or maybe at exactly the same time. Even with twins or triplets, there's a delay between each baby's birth. So their birth times will all be different, and that can affect the whole structure of the birth chart quite a lot. So how do we work it out, and what happens if I don't know my time of birth? Those are going to be the things that people are going to worry about if they were sort of thinking they would have their birth chart looked at. First of all, if you don't know your time of birth, obviously it helps if you know whether it was nighttime or morning or daytime, and within those sort of say 4 quadrants, whether it was early morning, lunchtime, afternoon or evening, consequently dinner time, or into nighttime, middle of the night. Now sometimes astrologers will work with just a kind of a noon chart, which just basically gives a general idea of an ascendant, because the ascendant dictates the different areas of the chart. So it's like when I talk about house systems, like the first house is about I, me, who I am. The second house is about money and finance. Now, obviously, the important thing is we want to actually know which sign is ruling that particular house, because then we will know where the transiting planets are in that chart, linked in with your own birth chart, so that we can see how the transits of the current moment are affecting you personally. So let me explain a bit more, because I've got my globe here and I just want to, there we go, let's see, here we go. And so let's have a look up here. We've got Europe. Now, with a globe, or when we're casting a chart, we work on the longitude. So you've got to imagine that, you know, we are a big, huge orb speeding through the cosmos at the most ridiculous speed. If we knew how fast we were going on this rock, I think we'd feel quite sick. And so basically, I think it's always important to remember that when we're born, supposing you're born here, there are planets all round in the solar system around this area. So not only have you got planets visible in the sort of upper hemisphere, but there are planets down here underneath where you've been born up here that we can't see, but they're still there and they still affect us. And also with the ascendant, what's so interesting is that if you were born, let's say you were born in London, England, okay, but you decide to move to Australia. Now, that will change the whole nature of your chart. Now, why is that? Because it's done on longitude. So not only have you moved into the southern hemisphere, so basically when you were born, all the planets are now coming at an angle to your particular chart in a different way, but also you've moved round the planet. So everything is at a different angle. Now, the sun, of course, is the center of our galaxy, of our solar system. And so we are actually spinning round the sun. as are all the planets. And we have the moon, as we know, going round us. Now, what happens is, traditional Western astrology is based on the planet Earth, in a sense, being like the centre, so that everything goes around the planet, which we know is actually not true. But for the purposes of astrology, it still gives us the correct angles of the planets as their energy, if you like, and the angle of their energy hits the planet. So we know with the moon takes 28 days to go around the planet. And we know it affects water, it affects the sea, the oceans, it affects the tide. It also affects when to sow seeds. There is an almanac that used to be, it probably still is, printed in the United Kingdom, which was this sort of lunar almanac. And that gave all the seasons of the moon and all the dates and the times and the rising and the setting and the full moon and the first quarter, etc., new moon. And it told farmers when it was the best time to sow seeds and when it was the best time to harvest them. And they've worked this way for thousands of years, which I think is really super exciting. And we take all of that for granted. It's a bit like with, the female menstrual cycle, which is 28 days long. And it's the same cycle as the moon takes. So so basically women are affected by the energy of the moon. And we know that, for instance, emergency departments at hospitals always get extra staff on the night of a full moon, because they know they do get basically lots more casualties because people tend to seem to go a bit mad around the full moon. So it's all really interesting. Now, the reason why, if you were born in London and you've moved down to, say, Sydney, Australia, is that the sun was here, and so in Australia it was probably early in the morning that you were born, whereas if you were born in London it was actually sort of late at night. So what happens is it changes the whole structure of the chart, because what we have is something called the ecliptic. Now I'm just going to show you a chart here. It's just a random chart, and so that basically you can see this is what a natal chart looks like. Okay, so I'll just bring that a bit closer, see if you can see it. Okay, now the line down the centre or across the centre is what we call the sort of, that's like the equator. So this top bit is what is visible in the night sky or the day sky when you are born. And underneath here is, say, where Australia is and where other planets that are transiting are making aspects to the planet. Now the sign on this line here, okay, that is actually rising when you are born is your ascendant. Now, why is that important? Because the ascendant, astrologers have noticed over quite a few thousand years that whatever your ascendant is, it actually determines much more about your kind of personality and how people experience you when they meet you. So for instance, if somebody is born with a Pisces sun, but they've only got the sun in Pisces, and let's say their ascendant is Leo, we will actually experience somebody who very much wants to be centre stage, and yet that wouldn't be typical of a Piscean. And they may find themselves thrust in the sort of the public eye, and yet retreat from it, but to a certain extent quite like it, because they wouldn't have put themselves in the situation where they're in the public eye if they hadn't had that Leo ascendant. So that's how it works. So it's so dependent, a chart, as to what other planets are doing in the other signs. So let's go back to our example of the Leo ascendant and the Pisces sun. So for instance, for the Leo ascendant, all my big boys, Saturn, Pluto and Jupiter, would all be in the 6th house of this chart. Whereas if it was the Pisces sun, okay, if we were just looking at it as Pisces, then all those planets are actually in the, it would be the 10th, 11th house. And so basically it shifts the whole focus of what is happening in your life onto a different area. So supposing you were Pisces sun and Pisces ascendant, then it's like a double whammy of Pisces. So not only will you be truly Pisces, but you will come across to everybody as a true Piscean. And that's how it changes and that's how it differs. So, but what happens if you don't know what time you were born? Because it's the time of birth that determines the ascendant. Because at that particular time, the sign that's coming up over the horizon is your ascendant sign. So with our fictional Pisces sun in Pisces, we have the sign of Leo was coming up over the ascendant, as we call it, when this Piscean was born. So they will have influences of Leo in their kind of nature. Now, let's look at what happens if you don't know what time you were born. So if you've got some idea of roughly whether it was day or night, that can help a bit, because as an astrologer, and myself, like lots of other astrologers, we can do something which we have a big fancy word for it, rectification. But basically, we can start to work out from life events the most likely ascendant for you. So for instance, I would actually look at what your passion is and what your great love is, because that would probably give me a huge clue as to what you like doing in the world. And if I know what you like doing in the world, if I know what your sort of public persona is, then that's more than likely that the sign that represents that. So let's say you are a singer, okay, then it's quite likely you've got Taurus on what we call the midheaven. Well, the midheaven, quite simply, is what's up here at the top, okay? So, and the sign rising at the side would be Leo. So there we have, not only does this person like singing, but they have a Leo ascendant, which puts them out in the public eye. So this is how we can choose it. Supposing you love banking and figures and auditing, then you're more than likely to have Virgo or Libra on this midheaven point. So if we just come back to my chart again, just to show you, that's basically what sits up here. So it's actually really this position of the chart that I would look at more than what the ascendant might be, because that will give me a really good clue as to what the ascendant is. Once we've got the ascendant, everything can fall into place. We know which houses are affected by the transiting planets, and we know then what areas of your life you can expect to be affected by the current transits. So I hope that helps a bit to just explain what the ascendant is. The best way, of course, would be to perhaps book a session and have an astrology session with me, and then we can look at your chart and we can look at the energies at work in your chart, how it can help you. You know, it's really interesting with astrology because it's very much a self-developmental kind of process. It's not really about fortune telling as such. It's not predicting the future, although you can get a sense of the energies and where they are inclining you towards. It's more about how we work with those energies, because if you understand your chart, you know, even if you're just understanding where the major activity is going on in your chart, and, you know, this year and the last couple of years, we've had all this focus on the sign of Capricorn. So wherever that's falling in your chart, you will then know what area of your life has been really greatly affected by it. For example, if it's all in the 6th house, say, so that's your Capricorn house, because we've got this Leo ascendant, then the emphasis of the Capricorn big boys in your 6th house would be very much about day-to-day work, health, really taking care of your health, not allowing yourself to, sort of skip medical appointments, but to actually really, if something needs addressing, to address it. Because Saturn's involved, it can be structure, it can be one's diet, it can be very much about perhaps getting one's sort of dietary health into a better kind of condition. And yet for someone else it might be, for say Cancer, if you're a Cancer ascendant, all the Capricorn energy, so you may have Sun in Taurus, but you've got a Cancer ascendant, but all the Capricorn activity has been happening in your 7th house of significant relationships, of your beloved, your other half, your husband, your wife, your soulmate, the important people in your life. And so you would have seen huge changes going on, and there would have been a huge amount of challenges coming from having a Cancer ascendant in the last 2 or 3 years. So I hope this goes some way to just explaining a little bit more. And as I say, I'd be very happy to look at your chart with you. And so if you would like to book a session or subscribe, or both, to my YouTube channel, and then I will be doing more videos like this explaining other areas of astrology, then please have a look at my website. The website address is just in the description box underneath this video, and it would be really lovely to meet with you and do your chart for you and give you the guidance. And it actually, what it does is it gives you more control over the direction of your life, because you know the areas of your life that you really need to pay attention to and serve well. So thank you so much for joining me for this video, and I will see you all soon. Thank you. Bye for now.